Acknowledge on behalf of DA Cy Vance, we have the Chief Information Officer for the Manhattan DA's office, Ken Kern here. Want to thank the DA. He's been a leader on the issue of cybersecurity, and we obviously are working very closely with that office. And want to thank an old friend, founder of Civic Hall, and a great voice for a free and open internet, Andrew Roche. Thank you so much. Good to see you. And Andrew, you'll be happy to know we have mayors all over the country now joining us for new action in favor of net neutrality, which we're going to be building upon in the coming weeks. So it's 2018, as Andrew and others have said to me for a long time, what they projected has come to fruition. Our lives are lived online. And I think we as a society are still catching up with the fullness of what that means. It means every aspect of our lives. It means our finances, everything we do with government, everything in terms of our jobs, our education, you name it, it's online. That's created a tremendous amount of possibility and opportunity. On the one hand, there's many positive things we could say about the flow of information and the freedom of information. But we all know that a host of dangers have been created as well. And we have to deal with those realities. And it's become, clearer and clearer, even in recent weeks, the whole nation now looking more deeply at the question of the sanctity of our own data, the information that's the core of our lives. It's become a deep national concern, the concern that everything we used to believe was private may not be anymore. So the positives and the possibilities of life online, exemplified by the good work that happens through Civic Hall, have to be juxtaposed against the tremendous new challenges and new dangers. And we look at that here in New York City through the perspective of public safety. We've been very honored to say in this city that we're the safest big city in America. But now we have to extend that concept to the lives of our people in terms of everything they do online. We can't be the safest big city in America if New Yorkers aren't safe online. And we cannot wait around for other levels of government to do something about it or for the private sector to do something about it, because we'll be waiting a long time if we do that. We have to act now. We know that technology has profoundly changed our lives. We know that smartphones literally put the whole world into people's pockets. We know that mobile phones now account for 50% of all web traffic. So the good news is smartphones put the world at our fingertips, but they also put private info and data at the fingertips of thieves. And we need to do something to protect our people. Today, even the smallest details can be weaponized and turned against us, like when someone's identity is stolen or their bank account is hacked into. We saw it on a grand and deeply troubling scale during the 2016 election. We've seen it since as states have seen their voter rolls invaded. So we're living in a different time, and we in government have to be agile and have to come up with new solutions. I wish I could tell you that we could depend on the private sector in this, but I don't believe that's the case. Unfortunately, in too many cases, internet providers and corporations have created a wild, wild west atmosphere. They will offer protection, but they'll only offer it if people pay for it and under certain conditions. So the bottom line is, if these internet service providers and corporations will not provide protection across the board, we in New York City will. And we are announcing today NYC Secure to be a comprehensive approach. And this is today the beginning of a bigger effort to work with people all over the city, literally every New Yorker, to protect them. This approach will start quickly and it will build out. Two of the most important things we'll be doing in the short term. We'll be providing a free app to all New Yorkers and will warn them about suspicious activity on their devices. Again, this is the type of protection that most people don't have and can only get under certain circumstances, or if they pay a certain amount. We are making this available for free across the board to all New Yorkers, and that will be available by this summer. And we're taking action to secure Wi-Fi, world-class protection for public networks. This is something that government has had, and we want to use more fully to protect people when they access Wi-Fi networks. I think it's important to see it this way. Everyone here would agree it's our job in government to keep the streets safe, to make sure that the environment is clean, to make sure that roads are repaired. Those are things we all think of as very, very normal and everyday. But now that our lives are more and more online, it's our job in government to make sure that people are safe online. This is a new reality, and we are taking the first steps into that reality. We hope to prove that this city can do it and inspire others to do it as well to protect their people. This today, the reality today, is that the main street of people's lives is more and more virtual. So it's our job to protect that main street. I want to say a few words in Spanish. Hoy anunciamos NYC Secure, nuestro plan para proteger a los neoyorquinos y sus datos personales de los ataques en línea. En estos tiempos no podemos decir que somos la ciudad más grande, más segura del país, si los neoyorquinos no tienen seguridad en Internet. With that, I want to introduce a man who does something absolutely crucial every day for New Yorkers. He is not well known, but his work could not be more fundamental to protecting this city. And he is one of the architects of this plan. And I want to thank him for recognizing that New York City needed to lead the way in this brand new environment. My pleasure to introduce our Chief Information Security Officer for the City of New York, Jeff Brown.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. As the Mayor said, I'll explain New York City Secure and the tactics we're launching today in slightly more detail.
I'll make that better for you.
Thank you, sir. New York City Secure represents an unprecedented commitment by New York City, by any city in the world, to protect the digital lives of its people. First, some background on factors contributing to the current state of cybersecurity that inform the decisions we made. Every day, the headlines from around the world remind us that cyber threats are very real for average Americans, as well as companies and governments. In early 2017, mobile phones accounted for 50% of web traffic, and the average person spends more than 5 hours a day on their smartphone. 5 hours a day. Despite the significant growth in use, mobile phones remain vulnerable to attack. Industry experts estimate that by 2030, 30% of all cyber attacks will be mobile-based. Considering these facts, it is clear that cyber protection is a necessity. We recognize that we have a role not only in the defense of our own city technology, but also in helping New Yorkers protect themselves. And that brings us to NYC Secure, a new citywide effort to help New Yorkers protect their online lives. Today we highlight our first initiatives, but intend on evolving our tactics as technology and defensive approaches develop and as threats shift. We start with two tools. One, an app to protect your mobile device, and two, a technology that will improve the cybersecurity of city-provided public Wi-Fi networks. These initiatives and all subsequent NYC Secure efforts prioritize privacy. We believe security does not need to come at the cost of the public's privacy. We are the first city in the world to make this kind of commitment and provide such digital security services to the public. The mobile protection that we'll make available for free to the public is not available by default for smartphones today. And most Wi-Fi networks do not have the level of security we will be providing. So first, the app and how it works. It will be free to all New Yorkers and will be downloadable in iPhone and Android app stores. When installed, the app will issue a notification to users when suspicious activity is detected on their mobile devices. It's important to note that zero personal data is requested or required for use. Users will receive recommended steps to protect themselves, such as disconnecting from a malicious Wi-Fi network, navigating away from a compromised website, or uninstalling a malicious app. The app will not take the actions on the phone by itself. This is a city-sponsored app, and it will operate under a strict privacy policy with technical controls that will ensure user privacy is respected. It will work without accessing any personally identifiable information and will not transmit any private data off the phone. Commercial technology like this typically checks for threats by collecting data from the mobile device and sending that data externally to be analyzed. This means users must sacrifice the privacy of their data to secure their devices. This app will operate differently. It will help New Yorkers make their own decisions to avoid the threats they encounter when they use their phones and tablets to interact with the internet. Next, let's discuss how our Wi-Fi protection works. We are adding a new layer of world-class protection to strengthen our city public Wi-Fi networks. We have partnered with the nonprofits Global Cyber Alliance and Quad 9 to protect systems against the most common cyber threats. We will help protect users who are browsing the internet on city guest wireless and public Wi-Fi from being victimized by websites known to download malicious software, such as websites that attempt to trick you into giving out sensitive information like your usernames, passwords, or credit card details. The Wi-Fi protection, Quad 9, works by checking the website you want to go to against a list of known malicious sites. If the website turns out to be malicious, Quad 9 will prevent that site from loading on a device. Quad 9 keeps a device from connecting to a site that is only on the internet to deliver malware or steal your data. The user doesn't need to take any action. A Wi-Fi provider can set up Quad 9 and all users of that Wi-Fi are automatically protected. It does all of this without storing any personally identifiable information and adheres to the highest standards of user privacy. To start, we're deploying across all guest and public wireless networks provided by New York City agencies by the end of the year. 18 city agencies in office are already protected with Quad 9. Our hope is that additional public Wi-Fi providers will also choose this technology or something similar that equally protects against malicious sites and respects privacy. Further, this is a protection that anyone can set up at home as well. You can learn how by visiting secure.nyc. We believe that a strong, safe, fair, and prosperous NYC depends on securing the digital space where so much personal and economic activity happens. Private companies have used technologies similar to this on an enterprise level, but New York City is making this available for all New Yorkers. We as a city hope that this initiative will spark a public discourse on how governments can take action to help improve cybersecurity for the public and help protect people on their online lives. All of us at Cyber Command are honored to defend the city's digital infrastructure and assets and to help New Yorkers protect themselves online. I want to thank the mayor for his commitment and focus. New Yorkers, including myself, are fortunate to have a city government that understands how vital digital security is to ensuring the strength, fairness, and prosperity of the city we all love. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say, as we have been working to trying to figure out the best ways to protect people, we've been working closely with the City Council simultaneously on all the ways to maximize civic involvement online and to maximize civic participation. And I want to thank Councilmember Ben Kalos, who's with us, and we stood together a few months back when we signed the bill to allow for online voter registration, which was an important step forward. So the council has been tremendously focused on the positive ways that we could use the internet to involve New Yorkers more deeply, but also share the concern representing people at the grassroots level about security. And I want to turn to Councilman Kalos and note that on top of his governmental concern, he is also a computer programmer himself, so he knows of what he speaks. Councilmember Ben Kalos.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. Thank you to Civic Hall for being the home where technology meets government. The most important app for your phone is actually NYC 311. However, now there is a second most important app, which is now going to be NYC Secure. And what the mayor is doing is nothing less than groundbreaking. We do need to keep our residents safe in the physical world, but now so much of what we do is tied to the online world that we need to keep our residents safe and our business interests safe and our government safe online. Today is all about viruses for me. I just got my daughter vaccinated with everything recommended by the DOH MH, and similarly, I've also tried to do everything I can to protect her and protect her privacy and protect her personal information. It's why you won't find her name floating out there, her date of birth floating out there, where she was born floating out there, all because these are the kinds of information that people can use to steal your identity. Yep. And so what is happening here is so important. With the Link NYC, which is another groundbreaking initiative of this administration, where literally we have free gigabit internet throughout the city, throughout my district, it's important to know that those Wi-Fi systems are secure, that you're not going to have to worry about people packet sniffing, and that we are keeping our government secure. I will tell you honestly, I was up late last night. There's a zero-day exploit on the Drupal stack, which is used by the White House to the city of New York. And we were all up, programmers all over the world, trying to make sure that our software was up to date, safe from compromise, and making sure that all the information that we have about people is safe. So this is incredibly welcome, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. I know that our host, Andrew Roche, is rarely at a loss for words. Would you like to say a few things? Come on over. This is one person I knew I could call on with great confidence.
Thank you, Mayor. So, welcome everybody to Civic Hall. So, yes, this is a place for bringing together people from the tech industry and city government and the public together to talk about the future and how technology is going to be used. And unfortunately, as much as I have been promoting the idea of technology for the public good, it's now being used for many nefarious purposes that are putting not only our government and the public and our businesses but our infrastructure, our electrical systems, our airline systems, our water systems. We are unfortunately experiencing a global cyber war. I was just mentioning to one of the press colleagues here that it's not about bots and trolls. It's really about an understanding about the threats of cyber attacks from not just governments that might be trying to do us harm, but also from individuals or organizations that are anonymous and are hard to track. And the reason why this particular initiative is so important and shows important leadership by this city is that other cities will pay attention to this, and this will show that the rest of the country that this topic of cybersecurity cannot be taken lightly. It's not just about whether you clicked on a app and read the terms of service all the way through. It's about really understanding the infrastructure of our society, which is now based on technology to such a large degree that we cannot afford under any circumstances. We should not wait for a Pearl Harbor moment to occur to wake everyone up to this issue. And you may have read about Atlanta having its computers shut down for 5 days this past week. This is going to continue, and the fact that the city of New York is taking steps to protect its infrastructure and protect its citizens is, as Ben said, groundbreaking and unprecedented. And Civic Hall and the technology community of New York and the members of Civic Hall will do everything we can to support this initiative, as we are here today inviting you to make this announcement. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate it. We're going to take questions on this announcement, then we'll go to other topics. What we got on this announcement? Go ahead.
How do you narrow it down to New York City residents to sign in if you're not collecting personal information? Could anyone from any state then sign in?
I'm going to let my colleagues go into anything technical. Who's got it?
Thank you for the question. You are correct. There are some limits in how you can geographically set the download. So the way the app will work is based on, with both of the primary app download stores, it will be based on the U.S. piece. We will not be collecting any geographically locating information from that person that wants to use this capability.
I'm sorry, a little more. So you have to be physically in the city to do it, or?
Our intent, we're going to work with the technology company in order to build these to our specifications. The intent is to make sure that that verification was are you a New Yorker? And then you would just click yes. You are not going to send your IP address, your geographic location, in order to take advantage of this.
So it's going to be promoted in the city, and obviously people are going to be most focused on it in the city. But I think to the question, are there going to be limits beyond that? I think the answer is it's available.
It's available.
The focus will be on promoting it to New Yorkers.
Yes.
Any questions over here? Okay, go ahead back. Wait, go ahead.
Given the given what's been going on in Atlanta for the last few weeks, what is the city doing to protect itself from having something similar happen? And given that the current commissioner of DeWitt, his previous job was running Atlanta's tech department, do you have confidence in his ability to do that?
Yes, I'll start and I'll turn to the deputy mayor. Picking up on what Andrew said, these attacks are now, unfortunately, a part of life at all levels of government. We've obviously seen at the federal level, even some of our security agencies dealing with very, very serious attacks and having to work really hard to overcome them, and sometimes experiencing breaches that they then have to learn from. So this is a current reality. One thing New York City has that I think is different than many other places is we established a cyber command that is very rigorous and well supported with people who are up to the task. I can't speak for any other jurisdiction. I don't know what they have. I know here we focused on a very substantial and professional apparatus because we saw this threat coming. And I want to thank Jeff and his whole team, who are people we've recruited who have done very impressive work in other places to come in here and help us build that out. So I'm confident in our cyber command. I'm also confident in our Department for Information Technology, but that department does other things too. That's about the day-to-day maintenance of our information technology across the city. And the last thing I'd say before turning to Laura is this is literally, I've had real interesting, fascinating talks with Jeff and his team. This is not we have to upgrade each year, we have to learn each year, we have to learn each month. This is literally down to the day and the hour where adjustments are being made because the situation is so dynamic. But we have a team that thinks that way and has the capacity. So Laura, and then obviously Jeff, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I'll just add that the thing we are doing different is that we realized, and the mayor was very aggressive in this stance, that we want to make sure that we are ahead of the game instead of trying to react to things to prevent things. So that's why we did set up Cyber Command. Jeff and his team mainly came in from the private sector, financial services, some with military backgrounds. So we feel like we have established a very small team, a very good team that is going to be continually growing as we know this will become more important. I think we feel comfortable that our detections are very comprehensive, and so something that happened in Atlanta would not have happened here. But we know that there will be new challenges. We know that we will have to be proactive. We monitor 365 days a year, 24/7. So we are trying to get always ahead of it instead of getting behind it and having to figure out how to fix it. So,
Jeff, you want to add?
Sure. So to complement what was said, our experts are actively learning what happened in Atlanta and other places every single day and ensuring our defenses are ready. We are in contact with the cybersecurity partners in other cities, in the private sector, and with law enforcement to make sure we have the most timely information possible. That's part of the business of doing cybersecurity. But we have seen concerning and changing threats for many, many years, and that's why our city continues to have a dedicated focus on what's happening across that threat landscape. Again, that is the business of cybersecurity every single day, all day long.
Okay. Yes, did you have one?
Is this a 24-hour, is the Cyber Command constantly monitored by human and not, I'm sure by not human?
I want you to know great minds think alike, because when I was meeting with them last year, I said this question, is this how 24-hour? Explain it to them.
Yes, certainly. So there are humans, 24 hours to make sure to do the work that only humans can do, make those critical decisions. But the technologies, you are correct, there are many, many automated systems, ones we build ourselves, ones that we deploy from the private sector that act timely from a machine-to-machine perspective to defend the city's technology systems.
Yeah.
You said Wi-Fi tech. Are you talking about desktop computers too, not just phones?
So for the NYC Secure Initiative, yes? Yes. So for the Wi-Fi initiative is any device that wants to access a public Wi-Fi, whether it's a tablet, a phone that accesses through Wi-Fi, or a laptop that someone might want to just walk into a coffee shop and interact with the public Wi-Fi spot. That's the way this technology works. To reiterate, we're rolling it across the city agencies as the start of our initiative.
So whatever device you're on, it doesn't matter.
As long as you're connecting to the Wi-Fi spot, yes.
it's the Wi-Fi that is secure, not the device. So.
Okay, David.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like there's two different things we're talking about. There's the efforts of the city and the Cyber Command to protect city computer systems. Then separately, there's this app that anybody can download. Is there any interaction between those things? Is there some reason why more New Yorkers having an app would actually protect city systems? And then secondly, how much money is the city going to spend advertising this? Because it seems like you need to promote it so people will download it.
Well, I'll start and my colleagues will jump in. A very important question you're asking. Yes, there's a lot of interaction between these pieces. So before today's announcement, an elaborate effort through Cyber Command to protect everything the city does. But one of the growing concerns over the last months was that if we didn't help protect everyday New Yorkers, first of all, they would be vulnerable just like they would be to physical crime. They would be vulnerable to online crime. And we took an expansive view of the definition of public safety and said, look, if people's identities are going to be stolen, their money's going to be stolen, their lives are going to be disrupted, we need to reach in and protect them. But your other point is crucial here. We also thought a lot about the fact that if individuals' lives are being disrupted, that means there's a potential exposure for government, because anyone interacting with the government online has had their situation invaded, obviously that endangers the government side as well. So that's my non-techie way of leading in, but why don't you make that lurid and it clear about how one infection can lead to the other, if you will.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Don't make it too lurid, but
Oh, you want the hard truth.
Was this developed originally for city workers, and that you want city workers to have it on their phones, and then you decided to make it public, or was this always meant to be for the public?
So there's multiple pieces to that, so let's dissect it just a little bit. So first, what the mayor spoke about is very accurate. One of the realizations we had is that the services that are enabled by technology, they're provided by city agencies that New Yorkers interact with every day. New Yorkers technically interact with those services. So one of the realizations we had was that as a community, New York's cybersecurity hygiene was a concern to us as the government. Now, a very important line to draw is that the app and the Wi-Fi initiatives under the NYC Secure umbrella, from a data perspective, are distinct initiatives that, as opposed to our effort to secure the enterprise of New York City's city assets. So Cyber Command will receive no data from the NYC Secure initiatives. So now I want to make that fine line, but I think the point is very accurate. How we cohab the digital space of New York City means risks can be introduced to the total in that interaction. Now, the second part of your question was about the development of the app. Our intent is to go to use a provider that is enterprise grade. So the provider that same provider that does the enterprise deployment and the protection of our city's workforce phones is the provider that we are looking to for the build out of this application. So the city didn't build it itself. Again, we intend to partner with a private company called Imperium that has developed the most advanced mobile threat prevention app that at the same time is incredibly protective of user privacy.
So just to summarize, Jeff and his team have already been working to secure city phones and iPhones. So we're actually going one step further in developing that and pushing that out to the public. So it was all one plan, but the thought was if we can do it here, we can push it out to residents.
I think what Laura's trying to say, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. But yes, if we could figure out how to do it right for city employees, it made a lot of sense to do it more broadly. Your question on the cost, so the initial estimate is about $5 million a year for the whole program. I would argue that the promoting it is going to be the easy part. I think when people hear they have an app available for free to protect their data, I think we're going to have a huge amount of interest and pickup on that. So I'm not particularly worried about a promotional budget for that one, but the overall cost of everything we're describing is about $5 million. Way back.
Mr. Brown, you said the app would be sharing any personal data. Would the app in any way be useful to law enforcement that would be targeting the user, whether it's with a judicial order or a subpoena?
So this app does not change the mechanisms that law enforcement already has in order to do the great work that they do. As I noted before, the app itself does not send any data to New York City government. We don't interact with it in that way, but it in no way, shape, or form changes all those great mechanisms that law enforcement has to do the great work they do to protect our city.
But there'll not be a city app on people's phones. Will that help law enforcement in any way if they have a valid court order or judicial order?
No, it's neutral. It doesn't change
Yeah,
anything.
it doesn't change anything. Thank you.
On 9/11, obviously there was a physical manifestation of terrorism. It seems like it could be done just from someone sitting at their computer now.
That's right.
What about not just the city, and Atlanta had problems I read with people paying parking tickets and that sort of thing, but what about hospitals? What about the MTA? What about airports? Is there a vast coordination? I guess you can also be a Luddite and say that we're going to do things the way we did in the 60s where everything was just on a piece of paper.
Right. No, your question's very important, and it gets to Andrew's point. When Andrew invokes Pearl Harbor, he's not wrong to say that. I mean, we got a very sobering look just weeks ago when it was made clear that Russia had the ability to reach into power plants in this country, and that could have a devastating impact on the lives of people, on hospitals, on so many fundamental services. So, yeah, we need to look in the face the times we're living in. You're absolutely right. This could be the single most dangerous type of attack. That's why, just to finish, and I'll turn to you, we have Cyber Command for the express purpose of working across every element of the government. So what I've said to Jeff and his team is, you have carte blanche to reach into every agency to make sure they are as secure as possible. There are no bureaucratic boundaries from my point of view, no silos. We created Cyber Command with the power to reach in and make sure that every agency is as secure as it can be. Meanwhile, there's a lot of cooperation with other levels of government, and this has been true in our traditional efforts to fight terrorism. One of the good news stories, particularly because of the leadership of first Bill Bratton and now Jimmy O'Neill, was improving the relationships with other levels of government and fighting terror. Obviously, we try and bring that same approach to what we do with cybersecurity. And as you heard from Laura, the folks who are in the cyber team, some of them come out of the military, some of them come out of the private sector. Everyone shares the goal of working with different levels of government and other actors, and obviously the utilities as an example, because we're all in this together. Everyone has to see this as a mutual mission. So Laura and then Jeff can expand on that.
I think you touched on the point is Jeff and his team are not just focusing on New York City agencies, because that would only be one small piece of everything. So, Jeff goes and meets with Con Ed, and he meets with other organizations to make sure that we are all working together. He hosts interagency and broader than that, working groups and sessions to make sure that we all know what everyone is doing. So it's much larger than just government. So yes, it has to go to our hospitals, it has to go to our utilities, MTA, port. They're all part of the picture.
Do you feel like there's any red tape? I mean, this is obviously a life
Well, let me, before we get to red tape, there's always red tape, but this is one case we don't let the red tape stand our way. Just add to the description so people can, within the bounds of what you can say publicly, so people understand a little bit more just how deep the coordination is with different parts of government and other parts of New York City.
Certainly. So information sharing is an absolutely critical component of any cybersecurity program. Here in New York City, we have some of the finest enterprises in the private sector that conduct, cybersecurity every single day to protect their important missions and their clients and customers. We have relationships with them. Here in New York City, we have representations from other parts of the government, whether that be federal or otherwise, and they have their own capabilities in cybersecurity space. We have great relationships with them. One of the missions of Cyber Command is really to make sure that we knit those codependent components together, and so that we know if there's an impact against another organization. We may not technically have technical access, of course, to that independent organization, but they can pick up a phone and they can call us and they can say, hey, we're seeing something, we want to make sure you know about it, and then we can be a mechanism to make sure word gets out. It's the information sharing aspect of cybersecurity.
Go ahead on red tape.
Well, I guess if there's anything you want to say as far as spotlighting any problems that maybe you need to have other jurisdictions recognize, this might be a good time to say.
Or not.
Or not. I mean, if you wanted to publicize it. It's
Or
obvious
not.
It's obviously crucially important.
I can honestly say to that we have an incredible amount of cooperation. I think like cybersecurity is an issue that does break down all the walls. Like people care about this. I care about it. That's why I joined the mission here. And I think that the minute that I get in a room, let alone in a room with other CISOs, but like you have your technical experts, the people that are in the fight 24/7, get in a room together. There aren't walls. There really aren't.
Right.
Cooperation only benefits everybody here, and I think the community, especially the cyber community, understands that.
Yeah, and I want to say that may sound a little cheesy, but I think it picks up where you started the question. I think there's a profound understanding of the dangers we're facing. Public sector, private sector, all levels of government. I think people realize this is a brave new world and a dangerous dynamic. So this is one situation where I think the cooperation is coming out of necessity. Anyone who fails to share information might be putting their own institution in danger, and I think people recognize that. Okay, let me see. Yes.
When you download the app, are you getting full functionality of the app wherever you travel?
Yes. The prevention technology works wherever you go. It goes with your phone.
Yes.
I'm just curious about the Cyber Command's annual budget and headcount.
That is a sensitive matter, so we're going to just say that's the same thing when we talk about some of our counterterrorism activities, that we don't go into those details. Anything else? Yes.
Mayor, you've often been spotted using a flip phone.
Yes, I have.
I think you didn't necessarily be like a big app guy, but
No.
I'm
That was very gentle.
curious, I guess, how much of your life is lived online, what your interaction with this kind of technology is on a day-to-day.
Look, I mean, not a lot of my life is lived online compared to many. That's a true statement, but enough to be absolutely sober about the dangers we face. Anytime you think about putting in your credit card number or your date of birth or anything, it's unfortunately a cause for concern nowadays. So all I can say is I don't think it really matters if you do a lot online or a little online. Everyone should be worried at this point. And if we can do something that will help everyday people protect themselves, I think that's all to the good. Yes.
One more. Can you just talk about individual city employees? Are they being trained to do anything differently?
You mean general cybersecurity?
Yeah, certainly. Just like the question before, information awareness, cybersecurity training is part and parcel of a cybersecurity program. So, we're using very familiar mechanisms to make sure that people understand, if they get if they get an email that looks suspicious, perhaps that is not a legitimate email, things like that, certainly.
But I just want for everyone's sake, that we're doing that across all agencies. Right. And is that, I assume, because there's so many evolutions, like how frequently do we try and update people when you see things? Do you have a sense of that?
Well, so we have a program that's systematic to make sure that the entire employee base gets exposed to cybersecurity training, right? And then when it comes to using the knowledge that we gain based on the attacks that are happening in the wild across the threat landscape, we don't necessarily have to push that awareness directly to that individual person in that agency, because Cyber Command has the technical capability to make sure from a unified aspect we can act very, very quickly and check all those systems. So there's really two aspects to that defensive strategy. One is informing the person to make better decisions individually, and two, using the machine-to-machine connections to defend the machines themselves without a person in the middle.
All right, last call. Yes,
I do have a
please.
question. I'm slightly intrigued. Is it only the Cyber Command is located wholly in DeWitt, or is it across separate parts of the government? And is the reason you don't want to say how many people work for it or what the budget is because it would be drawing from different budget streams? Or I'm just not understanding why that's
I just think that it's something, as the mayor said, that is very sensitive information. So that is just information we're not going to share about the structure of it, where it lies, what it does. So that's just we're just not going to share that information. We're not going to, yeah.
Go ahead. Anything else, anybody?
Following up on that, are you sharing with City Council the call?
Yeah, obviously everything we do goes through the normal city budgeting process. But again, this is not a new reality. Everything in our counterterrorism efforts, we go through the same exact protocol. We don't outline all the details of our counterterrorism efforts. It's part of the broader budget of the NYPD. We don't delineate a lot of details about cost and personnel numbers, et cetera. But yes, of course, anything budgeting still has to go through a normal process with the City Council. All right, we are going to turn to other topics. Yes.
The governor continue to go back and forth over NYCHA. You want the state to turn over the money they've promised, but while this goes on, residents are still living under crumbling conditions. So what's being done today, March 29th, to help these people?
Every day we are trying to fix NYCHA. So let's put a couple of things in perspective. This is an organization that went through decades of disinvestment. We're trying to fix that right now. We've been trying to fix it for 4 years straight. Remember, for some of you were there, one of the very first announcements I made as mayor was that we started providing the resources to NYCHA to make repairs more quickly because NYCHA did not have enough money to even do day-to-day repairs. We gave them back money that they were literally having to pay to the NYPD for police services, if you can imagine that the Housing Authority had to pay for policing. Gave them back that money. We said, put it into repairs. We did a series of actions like that to provide the capacity to make repairs on a quicker basis. You may remember there were real concerns about safety. This was literally our first year here, 2014. We intensified NYPD's efforts in NYCHA. We added to youth programs. We opened up community centers. We've done a whole host of things to try and improve life in NYCHA. It's ongoing. The fundamental reality now, we're waiting for a updated count, but it's going to be well over $20 billion is the full price tag to literally fix everything. Our job is to constantly find new resources for NYCHA. In this most recent preliminary budget, we announced $200 million more, but the previous budget, we put an additional $1 billion in. We're going to keep putting in the resources. We're going to keep improving the management. We have a great new general manager in Vito Mostacciolo. This is going to be a long battle, and what I'd ask everyone to recognize, because I know the interest in NYCHA is a few months old, but the problem goes back decades. 400,000 people who depend on it for affordable housing. If NYCHA wasn't there, those folks would not have a place to live in New York City. We need to fix NYCHA in place. It will be a vast undertaking. This city government, the last 4 years, has finally done what I think should have been done a long time ago and put substantial resources in. We need some partnership. We're not getting it from the federal government, although I will say in the recent spending bill, there was some uptick that will help NYCHA, and that's very good. The state, to your original question, it's not a vague thing the state did. It was in the state budget in 2015 and in the state budget in 2017, and we still haven't seen the money. I don't understand how anybody, citizen or reporter, can sit still on that. It was money earmarked for the Public Housing Authority that never arrived. That's not acceptable. And you can't move the goalposts after you've passed and signed a budget. But somehow in New York State, that's okay. I don't understand that. So that money, that's $250 million, should be delivered so we can continue to make more and more repairs and fix the buildings. It's just going to be an ongoing fight. Go ahead.
Until that money gets here, there's not much else.
No, everything I just said has nothing to do with the state. Look, since we started this administration, we've done $2.1 billion in capital investments, $1.6 billion in operating expense investments. The state has done very, very little. The entire time I've been here, how much has gotten to us from the state of New York for NYCHA? $50 million in 4 years. $50 million versus what have I put in? $2.1 billion in capital, $1.6 billion in expense. The federal government, until this recent budget just passed, did not increase NYCHA funding in any way. So right now, it's New York City on its own trying to address a problem decades old based on primarily federal disinvestment. The answer to me is we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and fight. We're going to have to, year after year, fix buildings. We've already fixed a lot of roofs. We'll have more to say, giving people an update soon on how many roofs have been fixed, how many heating systems have been fixed, all the things meticulously we're trying to do building by building to bring them back to where they should be. But I'm also trying to be honest. If we've got a $20 billion backlog, this will be a long fight. I wish the state would take the position that when 400,000 New Yorkers, I mean, let's just put it in context. There's 19 million people in New York State. 400,000 of them live in public housing. I wish the state would take the perspective of, we need to come to the front here and help you out. We don't want to add strings. We don't want to add delays. We want to help you. The best thing they could do for us is give us the money that was already promised, $250 million. Give us design build authority. That will allow us to speed up all of the repairs and all of the work in NYCHA. The state gives itself that authority. Give it to NYCHA too. And then we can move forward.
So finally, what's your message to these residents? Because people are calling our station every day, inviting us into their apartments.
Sure.
Last night we had a ceiling crumbling on a crib. Today those repairs were still not made. They were saying they never got a ticket, even though this family had been calling and calling. So, you know, what's your message to these residents who are just living with the mold and the roaches and the...
I have been in many, many NYCHA buildings and many apartments. Some buildings are doing pretty well. Some are really troubled. I understand we've got a huge amount of work to do. My message to people is we understand loud and clear we've got a lot more to do, but we are putting our money where our mouth is. We are showing that repairs can be made more quickly. We are showing that roofs can be fixed. We are showing that developments can get safer. These things have happened in the last 4 years. We just got a lot more to do. And I know it's very tough for people, but we've got a lot more to do and we will do it. Yeah.
So the National Organization for Women held a press conference in front of 1PP today, citing statistics from the new DOI report this week on the Special Victims Division, talking about how these detectives they're understaffed. They made a note that, let's see here, the caseload of sex crime detectives are 20 times higher than that of a homicide detective. They mentioned their facilities are crumbling. What's your response to this? Is the city going to do something about this? Are they going to add experienced detectives to help women who are raped?
Look, there is nothing more important than addressing these crimes. So I want to be very, very clear. We are very focused on providing whatever it takes to get justice for women who have been victims of these crimes and to stop these crimes from happening to begin with. We know that more and more people, especially women, are coming forward. And as painful as it is to see the number of women who have been assaulted, it also means that, thank God, no one is, or not no one, I shouldn't say no one, fewer and fewer people are holding back, and that means we will stop this crime more because we're going to find the people who did it. So the commitment is 100% there to provide whatever we need. The NYPD disputes a number of the facts in that analysis. And I think the NYPD has proven over and over again that it has been very, very effective at addressing a whole host of crimes. And of course, I respect the commissioner's team, and I take their response very, very seriously. But the bottom line is, if we find there is a need for more personnel, we will give them the personnel. There's no question. We have been adding to special victims. We will keep adding if there's more need. That's something I would never hesitate to do. Mara.
I guess this is just a follow-up. I'm hoping you can expand on that a little bit. I mean, over the past year, we've asked about the uptick in sexual assault in the city. And the answer that we've gotten from the police commissioner and from police officials is that, as you said, more people are coming forward. Yeah. But we've also gotten, they've been repeatedly touting their handling of sex crimes as more aggressive and thorough than ever. But meanwhile, again, according to the Department of Investigation report, their, Deputy Chief Michael Osgood from SVD and other officials and other detectives were asking for more detectives, asking for more resources. So, and their pleas were ignored, according to the report. So, I mean, how do you explain that?
Look, again, I want to speak to what our vision is. Our vision is to do whatever it takes to address these crimes. And we've obviously put a tremendous amount of resources into NYPD. So there's no hesitation to add resources. We put 2,000 more officers on the street, for example, where the city council. When there's a DOI report and the agency involved disputes a lot of the facts, I think it's important to hear out the agency involved. I think NYPD really needs to be heard on this before anyone passes judgment. But the question is, would we invest if we need to address a problem? Of course we will. And to the question of reporting, and I've asked this in many, many meetings I've been in when we're discussing NYPD strategy, the people who have been running CompStat, who have been responsible for driving down crime consistently over years, are trying to understand this phenomenon and can't find any other reason. It's literally, I'm trying to be as analytical as I can be, because I've asked this question, you guys have asked a question, they've asked each other the question. Is there something else going on here? If murder's going down and assault is going down and robbery's going down, why is this one thing going up? We can't find any social or economic or other factor that we think is driving it. The only thing that we think is objectively different is the civic discourse, which, thank God, is now encouraging people to come forward and is willing to hold accountable their assailants. So we're going to keep trying to understand better the phenomenon and how to address it, but resources are not going to be an issue. I don't want to buy into anything in that report. If it's under dispute, I want to hear the PD's full explanation. Please.
Not everything in that report is being disputed by the NYPD. So, for example, as you noted, there has been a slight increase in detectives in that unit.
Yeah.
There were 74 detectives at the end of 2017, which is 2 more, which is an addition, but it's 2 more than they had in 2009. But the problem is the caseload increased in that period of time by 65%.
Mm-hmm.
And the NYPD does not dispute this number. So, in the DOI report, they recommended they said you should hire 73 more detectives. I mean, as you said, the city put 2,000 more officers on the street, but many of those went to counterterrorism. So have you discussed or have you asked police commissioner to add extra resources to this division?
I've told the commissioner very clearly that this is a major priority and we will provide the resources necessary. So again, anyone who's watched the work of the NYPD in recent years knows they take every crime seriously. They take these crimes seriously. Let's have this discussion, giving the commissioner a chance to explain his vision. But he has never failed to apply resources and personnel where it's needed. That's my view. Yeah.
I'm Sandra Mira. I'm a French journalist. I was organizing Time magazine as a person of...
To speak up, please.
I'm Sandra Mira. I'm a French magazine I met 2 years ago.
Yeah. What's your question?
Yes, my question is, so I was recognized by Time magazine as a person of the year because I launched in France the Me Too movement, and I wanted to know when you told that it was the easy part will be to make the promotion of the app. Do you have a special campaign for with people or fragile people like kids or women or old people? Is it included like a marketing plan? Or because I was thinking about kids especially.
Okay, you're back on the previous, the announcement. Is there a marketing plan? I think that's something we're going to work out as we get to rolling it out. So we obviously want young people who are the most energetic of device users to fully take advantage of the protection. Again, I'm working for the assumption that people will, when they start to recognize it's a good thing for them and it protects them and it's free, they will. As we said earlier, everyone's going to want to be reassured that their own data is not going to be requested in the process, and no, we will not request their data. But yes, I think you're right. We have to make sure that people feel comfortable, and young people in particular feel comfortable with it. Okay, yes.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I was at the Office of Immigrant Affairs budget hearing earlier this week. There was a lot of talk about the criminal carve-out for legal services for immigrants, not just facing deportation, but also just run-of-the-mill consults, etc. And I was curious if you think it's contradictory to be sending the message of immigrants should come out of the shadows, but also saying that those with any of those 170 convictions won't get city taxpayer money.
No, again, I respect anyone who asks the question. I've been asked this question many, many times. My position is 100% the same. We say in our city law passed 4 years ago, if you not only are arrested for one of those offenses, but if you are convicted through due process of one of those offenses, we will then cooperate with ICE. Those are all serious and, in many cases, violent crimes, and again, available to all of you to see if you haven't seen that list of 170. I believe fundamentally, if someone has been convicted of one of those crimes and we're going to cooperate with ICE in their deportation, that it is contradictory to say we're going to offer legal services. I won't do that. But what we did arrange with the city council was that there was private funding available so those folks could get legal services. And it's just a way of getting something done that the city council cared a lot about, but not something I believe should be done through government funding.
Right, I think there's a question of whether that funding is going to be re-upped for the next fiscal year, though.
Well, we have a budget process going on. So far, I think the initiative's working, but that's part of what we'll discuss with the council. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if you have an update for us on the state budget negotiations, if you've heard anything from your counterparts there, and where are we with the things that are vital for the city, such as funding for NYCHA, design, build, all these other priorities that you've laid out?
Well, it's literally been an hour-to-hour situation. It looked even on Sunday like they might close the budget early, and then it fell apart, and it's kind of gone up and down a bunch of times since then. So I'm updated every few hours. I've talked to Speaker Hastie a number of times. We're talking to everyone up there constantly. What I'd say is the city's central focus, as you said, design build, which is a way to save a lot of time and a lot of money, would help us immensely with NYCHA, would help us with the BQE, would help us building a new facility so we can get off Rikers. I mean, many, many ways that design build would help the city. We are trying to fight back a number of cuts to social services, to children's services, to education. And we are hoping, for success on a number of those fronts. There's a lot that's murky right now in the situation of what's going to be included. I mean, I would have obviously liked to have seen already things like speed cameras be in the foreground of this discussion. I guess there still is a possibility, but, something like that may have to wait for the legislative session, which we would make a major priority for our work over the next 3 months. But I don't have a sense of how and when they're going to resolve. The other thing I'd note, though, is what I do hear in a lot of the back and forth, which I think is a good thing for New York City, is that the idea that I've been pushing real hard of the lockbox on anything that gets done for the MTA, that idea does seem to have a lot of currency right now. So whether you're talking about a potential surcharge on taxis and for-hire vehicles for the MTA, or any of the other options that have been talked about to fund the MTA, the bottom line from my point of view is the lockbox has to be a part of anything. The money raised in New York City has to stay in New York City. That appears at this moment to be something where there's broad agreement.
Do you have an understanding of what some of the obstacles are? We have a report about one of the issues Senator Felder is pushing are some protections for the yeshivas, and that's been holding up negotiations. Do you have any insight into that?
I don't know the latest on that. Obviously, those issues have been raised before by him. But I think the reality of the budget is there's a whole lot of moving pieces, and I'm not clear, honestly, what is going to bring it together. I find the process in Albany very mysterious. I think Mr. Kalos would agree with me compared to the rather sane process here. I'm not sure I understand the Albany process, but we're just trying to be as clear as possible about the city's priorities on design build and on, again, pushing back as much as possible that $700 million plus in cuts that the governor originally proposed.
Speaking of the governor, what did you make of his plan leaked yesterday to take over a bunch of buildings around Penn Station?
Well, I won't be as colorful as Alicia Glenn, but I will say that it's astounding. It would basically undo environmental law and the way land use decisions are made and the role of communities in deciding their future. I mean, it's would change things that people have fought for generations in this city, and doesn't make any sense. We're going to make decisions about a big swath of the city. The community has to be involved. We have to abide by environmental rules and regulations. We have to make sure that things are done in a smart way. And by the way, any locality in the state should be very worried right now when they see that kind of proposal, because if the state comes along saying they're going to take away New York City's decisions, New York City's power to make decisions about its own city, well, then you could do it in Buffalo or Syracuse or, Westchester County or Nassau County. It's a very, very dangerous precedent. So my sense is a lot of people in Albany are deeply upset by it. And that, there's a lot of resistance that I think is going to have a big impact. Yeah.
Mayor, just switching gears for a moment. Today's the first day of the baseball season.
Yes.
Here in New York, an icon, Rusty Staub, passed away. He did so much work for the city, charitable work with the widows of the NYPD officers killed in line of duty. Just your thoughts today about Rusty Staub.
Yeah, amazing man. I'm a real baseball fan, so I admired him as a player. but admired him even more for what he did in the community. And, this is a guy who was beloved because he was so committed to helping. He cared deeply. And, I always say people who get famous and rich, they could walk away. But he was just a salt-of-the-earth guy who cared and wanted to help out, and obviously particularly cared about the families of our first responders. So he will be sorely missed, but what an amazing example. And listen, I'd like to see a lot more athletes follow his example. Yeah.
Given that there's this lawsuit against GHI, Emblem Health, Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield for allegedly, providing inadequate health care to hundreds of thousands of city workers and families, retirees, and given that you've sued fossil fuel companies and opioid manufacturers, are you considering a lawsuit against these large insurers as well?
Not at this point. This is obviously a pretty recent development, so I'd have to understand more. But whenever we make a decision like that, it's based on really careful deliberation. We don't do anything like that lightly. So the pure answer is not at this point, but we'll continue to monitor it. Go ahead.
Can you talk about Trip Zinitis? You were just at his service, your experience there with your wife, and what you experienced there and your takeaway from it.
It was really moving. Charlene and I were talking about this after the service. I mean, first of all, to see both the tradition of the NYPD and the tradition of the military blended together. I'm sorry, FDNY, thank you. FDNY and the tradition of the military blended together was very, very powerful. And, I went to NYU, so standing there in the middle of Washington Square Park, which is usually a pretty busy, lively place, and to have it be, very still, very silent, and the military ceremony was very moving. Kind of a sense of deep tradition there. And obviously the FDNY element just evoked how much it meant to him. I mean, Tripp is just, when you read this guy's life, it's unbelievable that he just kept going farther in terms of protecting people and helping people. And here's a guy who, ran into burning buildings so many times, and that could have been enough, but he just kept returning to the battlefield to help through the military as well. Meeting his family and seeing the sense of pride they had, and it clearly came from them too. I mean, one of the things I said to his mom was, we're all here honoring him, but you all also gave him this strength and this sense of commitment to others, and it was very life-affirming at the same time as it was very sad. The question I kept thinking the whole way through is what great things this guy could have achieved if we could have seen him live on, like what amazing things he could have been capable of. Let's do those two. David?
From the high to the low, when is the last time you spoke to Governor Cuomo? And I have a second question unrelated.
A couple weeks ago.
Okay, and then do you believe that the Human Rights Commission in the city made a mistake in investigating a complaint against the Wing All-Women's Club?
No, I think, look, when they get a complaint, they have to look into it. And the basic concept that, there needs to be adherence to our human rights law, of course that makes sense, and they have to do their best to interpret in each situation. What the Wing is doing, from everything I can tell, is a good and virtuous thing. But we also have to be consistent with our laws. So I don't think it's wrong of them if they got a complaint to look into it. I've said publicly I admire what the Wing is doing, and I think they're fulfilling an important service. But like every other good thing, it still has to be done within the law.
I'm going to ask about that as well. So just sort of to follow up, I mean, do you have any understanding of whether their club does violate the human rights law? And I
Yeah, I don't know the details. I mean, I only have, again, a very basic understanding of their work, and that I appreciate. What I've heard described, I appreciate. But this is why if you get a complaint, you look into it. It makes sense let the professionals take a look at it, and if there's a concern, they can address it. But I also would say if there even is a concern after they look at it, I think it can be addressed in a consensus fashion. Like, I don't assume here that the wing and the Human Rights Commission can't work this out. There's plenty of situations where a concern has been raised or a complaint's been raised. They sit down with the organization involved and they say, hey, what can we do here? And they resolve it. So that's what I would predict happens here.
What would you say to women? There was a big response from some of the women who are in the wing on social media earlier this week saying, essentially that a progressive administration in a time like this ought to be focusing on other concerns of gender discrimination rather than a women's only space.
Look, I understand that. I understand that view, but I also want to remind everyone, including my fellow progressives. And by the way, the chair of the Human Rights Commission is about as good and noble a progressive woman as you could ever hope. But the law is the law, meaning we're not selective in the enforcement of the law. If we get a complaint, it's our obligation to look into it. That said, the Human Rights Commission is very willing to work with people cooperatively to address concerns. And again, that's what I would predict happens here. But we can't be in the business of saying because of our political views, for example, we will follow up on some complaints but not on others. Government involves being fair and just to everyone. So we take every complaint seriously, equal treatment. Again, I'm hopeful for a positive outcome. Thanks, everyone.